What's going on, everybody? Welcome into episode 56 of the MudWatch Sports Podcast on this Monday, February 24th, 2025. I'm your host, Zach Malama. Before we get started, please subscribe below. Follow all of my social accounts. Let's start things off in the NBA as the New York Knicks were in action this weekend. And boy, it was not pretty to be a Knicks fan this weekend. As let's start on Friday night when the Knicks went to Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse in Cleveland and lost 142 to 105 to the Cleveland Cavaliers, who are in first place right now in the Eastern Conference, but a 37-point loss on the road for New York, and their biggest loss of the season so far. And really, overall, this one, when you look at the stats, they really speak for themselves, as the Cleveland Cavaliers were on absolute fire. They shot 60% from the field and 51% from beyond the arc. And the Knicks, on the other side, only shot 47% from the field and 35% from beyond the arc. Knicks had 17 turnovers to the Cavs' 15 turnovers. And then you look at the rebounding battle, and Cleveland out-rebounded the Knicks by 15, 47 to 32. So overall, you look at that game, and yeah, all right, stats speak for themselves. The Knicks cannot play defense well enough against a team like Cleveland, and Cleveland really an offensive powerhouse right now, one of the best scoring teams in the NBA this year, and they really just took it to the Knicks, and it was a rough one overall for New York. But you're thinking, all right, well, this was a bad one, but you can only go up from here as you head to Sunday's game on the road in Boston against the Boston Celtics, who sit in second place right now in the Eastern Conference. And that one was not much better. When you look at the Knicks, they lose 118 to 105. And yes, a little bit better from the defensive standpoint, that the Celtics only shot 49% and 38% from beyond the arc. But on the Knicks side, it just wasn't good enough once again. Out-rebounded again, 49 to 40. The Knicks shoot 43% from the field, 38% from beyond the arc. And in the end, the Celtics just cruise along. The Knicks made it a bit close when it came to the third quarter, outscored Boston 39 to 25, but that was after the slow start in the first quarter where the Knicks went down 38 to 19, and the Celtics doubled the Knicks score in just the first quarter, and it just was not good enough on the defensive end. And that's the big thing right now for the New York Knicks. Their defense, when they brought Tom Thibodeau in, was supposed to be one of the top defenses in the NBA. It was for a little bit, and you had guys like Julius Randle, who really was an anchor to that defensive team and really stepped up, and you had guys that wanted to play defense. This Knicks team does not want to play defense, although they have had some good games here and there where they've looked strong defensively. It's just not the same as those other years. And right now, this Knicks team cannot afford to play the defense that they do. They have some scorers in Jalen Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns that put up a bunch of points every single night. But if you have guys like Mikal Bridges, OG Anunoby struggling from the field each and every game, you cannot be a lackluster defensive team in the NBA. It's just not going to work. You look at the top defensive teams in the league right now. Orlando has dealt with injuries. They are actually the top team in the NBA, but they've dealt with injuries. Like I said, they missed their star players, a couple of them, for a lot of this year so far, and Franz Wagner as well as Paolo Banchero got them back, but still struggling to get things going. They're the top defensive team in the league, but then you look at the two teams behind them in opponent points per game. The Oklahoma City Thunder and the Boston Celtics. Where do they sit? At the top of their conferences. Cleveland, you could say, all right, well, they're not as strong defensively. However, Cleveland has a much better offense than the Knicks do. They have 5 guys, maybe even 6 guys, and then you have some more guys off the bench that can all come in and put up points. The Knicks don't have that. The Knicks don't have a bench right now, number one. They don't have guys that they can really rely on to come in and put points up off the bench. Deuce McBride was supposed to be that guy, but it just has not panned out that way. Only when he's become a starter in certain situations due to injury, then he steps up and puts up a lot of points. But off the bench, he hasn't been able to so far this year. So they don't have that. That's one down from the Knicks to those other teams, excuse me. But when you look at the Knicks right now, their defense is abysmal, and they have to change that if they're going to get past any of these teams in the Eastern Conference playoffs. How are you going to go up against a team like Boston or Cleveland with the defense that the Knicks are playing right now? It's just not going to work. They're middle of the pack in the Eastern Conference in terms of defense, sitting next to teams like Detroit and Philadelphia in opponent points per game. It's just not going to work that way, and the Knicks really need to pick this up, and they're finally seeing that. But I don't freak out too much in terms of it's a regular season game, and a lot of the time in the NBA, the regular season is just a little bit boring, and you got a lot of blowouts and really just teams being better than one another. In the end, it's going to be different in a 7-game series when you see a team multiple times. But when you look at the Knicks against these top teams in the Eastern Conference, it's just not even close. And when you head to the playoffs, it's just not even going to be even close for the Knicks to catch up to those teams in terms of points, in terms of defense. They're just not on the same level as those two teams in Cleveland and Boston. And whether they play them or not later in the playoffs, I don't believe there's really any chance that the Knicks can win that series. So that's something that the Knicks are really going to have to worry about. They have to pick up defensively. And I know that takes a lot in the NBA and a lot of guys buying in. But if they want to win something, their defense has to be better. And I expect more out of a coach like Tom Thibodeau that preached defense each and every year he was in the NBA so far, until the last couple of years where the Knicks dropped a lot defensively and in defensive rating. So they need to pick things up, but 2 straight losses to Cleveland and Boston. The Knicks really, really need to bounce back after those two, and they sit at 37-20 in the Eastern Conference, 3rd place still behind Cleveland and Boston, and now they head to a game at the Garden against Philly on Wednesday. We'll preview that on Wednesday's episode. Let's shift things to baseball and some breaking news out of Port St. Lucie, as the Mets have announced that Sean Manaea has been shut down for a couple of weeks and is headed to the IL with a right oblique strain, and this one a disappointing one for Mets fans after an offseason that's been very strong in terms of their lineup. However, their pitching, there have been some questionable moves. They did lose Frankie Montas last week. Talked about that one on some previous episodes. Go check those out. But when you look at Sean Manaea now, this is your ace. Who do you go to now? You have a couple of guys that are coming in, and Kodai Senga really hoping for a healthy year. He could be an ace of sorts, but you're not going to really put that pressure on him just yet if you are the New York Mets, although he did look very, very strong a couple of years ago. When you look at the rest of the options, though, you got Clay Holmes in there, you got Tyler McGill in there, you got David Peterson in there, and you got Griffin Canning as well, Paul Blackburn, one more name. When you look at those guys, though, not one of those guys can really be classified as an ace. And the Mets starting pitching really, really needs help right now. And if they go into the season with a starting rotation like that, it's very, very worrying in my mind. And obviously, it's going to be more important down the stretch and into the postseason. So it's not really the time to just freak out right now if you're the Mets. And obviously, you've seen some crazier things, a very slow start to last year's season, and then all of a sudden they go on that miraculous run all the way to the NLCS. So not going to freak out just yet, but this rotation does need some work, some development. Anything you could get from it right now to start the season is absolutely huge, and anything you could get from those 3 guys that you really have to rely on now in Senga, Peterson, as well as Clay Holmes. Anything more you can get out of those guys with both Montas as well as Manaea injured to start the season, I mean, that's a bonus for the New York Mets. So this is a big-time loss right now for the New York Mets. They lose their ace in Sean Manaea, and something that Met fans were really worried about heading into this season so far. They knew their lineup would be good, but would this pitching staff be able to hold up? And now 2 injury blows to start the season in spring training as we sit 1 month away from opening day. Let's move things to the other side of New York and up to the Bronx, where the Yankees made some news, but not really too important in terms of baseball news. Had some spring training games, and a couple of guys played well. Cody Bellinger, as well as Paul Goldschmidt, excuse me, both played well in their first games with the Yankees, so stepped up big time. And when it comes to the other news for the Yankees, the first one, the Yankees beard policy is officially gone. No more beards, or actually more beards for the Yankees, as they officially announced that beards can be allowed in this Yankee clubhouse. And a lot of these guys have really shaved and have been clean shaven all throughout their Yankee career. But Hal Steinbrenner switches that up and goes to a different approach here and allows guys to have well groomed beards. And in the end, that's a big time move, I guess, for the Yankees. And they don't want to lose out on a free agent if they do have that beard policy. I think Aaron Judge said it best. When you look at that rule overall, if a guy is deciding based on a policy like that, don't think he should be a Yankee in the end. I just don't think it's meant for him. So that's an interesting one. And the other news, that the Yankees are finally changing New York to only after wins and not after losses. This one's hits straight to the heart for me, as obviously a Yankee fan who goes to a lot of games, and listening to New York every single time. Not really the best. As I mean, they had That's Life when they lost to the Detroit Tigers the other day. But now you look at this one, and New York being played for wins. That's what it should be, celebrating the wins and not the losses. Really had to switch that up, and I'm very happy actually that they did so. So that should be interesting heading to those games at Yankee Stadium this season. Let's finish things off today with a college basketball update and just a quick recap of the weekend and some big time wins. Alabama beats Kentucky at Coleman Coliseum 96-83. Houston gets a big time win over a Iowa State team that was missing a couple of their top players. Keyshawn Gilbert, Curtis Jones, both not playing for that one. And credit to Iowa State for only losing by 9 in that game, in a game which could have got really, really ugly, considering the injuries that Iowa State had heading into that one. How about Duke at the Garden? 110-67. They blow the doors off of Illinois. 54-37 at halftime. How about 56-30 in the second half? And the Blue Devils had walk-ons hitting threes and really getting the bench going, and all hyped up. What a victory it was in the end. How about Tennessee going on the road to College Station and taking down Texas A&M, number 6 Tennessee over number 7 Texas A&M, 77-69. The Vols win it on the road. Big time road win for them. Oregon, what a run at the end of regulation, 16-2. How about it in the last 6 minutes of regulation? And they knock off number 11 Wisconsin. What a game it was for Oregon. And how about BYU and a questionable call in the end, towards the end of that game, but BYU gets a 1-point win at the McHale Center. And Arizona sputtering just a bit now, right in the middle of Big 12 play and coming towards the end of the Big 12 regular season. That's going to be something that they got to pick up heading into the NCAA tournament as well as the Big 12 tournament. They really need to step things up, and a couple of bad losses, a couple of shaky losses in the end for the Wildcats that they need to bounce back from. So that's a real good Saturday slate. And then you look at Sunday, and how about those Johnnies? St. John's takes down UConn, and a regular season sweep for the first time in a long time, as you got to look back all the way to 99-2000, the last time that the Johnnies got the best of UConn in both games, both in stores as well as at the Garden. So interesting stuff, and a great win overall for St. John's as UConn mounted a bit of a comeback, and what a first half it was for the Johnnies, 50-32 heading into the halftime locker room. UConn made a bit of a run. Caravan hit a couple of threes. He had Solo Ball hit a couple of threes, and but St. John's really did a great job holding them off, and Kadari Richmond really stepped up in this one, and a great performer. How about Zuby Ejiofor down low in a tough game? UConn's got some tough bigs down there, and especially Samson Johnson, Taurus Reed Jr., and Ejiofor goes for 18 and 9 rebounds. Davon Smith off the bench, 8 assists. So, I mean, just an all-around great performance, and the bench really stepped up. A couple of solid contributors once the Johnnies got into a bit of foul trouble. A guy like Kadari Richmond dealt with that throughout the day, still had 18 points in just 25 minutes. And obviously the Johnnies playing very, very well right now and continuing to roll as we head towards March. So it's a great time to be a Johnnies fan, and they just continue to roll right now in the Big East at 15-2 on the year in conference. And then you look at the other game from Sunday, and what an upset in the end as Indiana knocks off Purdue 73-58. And how about this difference in the second half versus the first half for the Hoosiers? 25 points in the first half. They were down 37-25. 48-21, they outscored the Purdue Boilermakers in the second half, and they knock off number 13, Indiana, with a huge win to really push them closer. They are a bubble team right now, but they are only 7-9 in Big Ten play, 16-11 on the year. They need to step it up down the stretch, and a win like this against Purdue and a high-profile win for the Hoosiers could definitely boost their confidence heading into the next couple games. Let's just quickly look towards tonight's games. It's Michigan has a tough one on the road in Nebraska, and it's going to be a very close game here as Michigan is the 12th ranked team, on the year, and they are 1.5-point favorites taking on Nebraska today. When you look at the other game, though, it's the big one at 9 o'clock. Number 5 Houston, number 9 Texas Tech in Lubbock, and Houston 1.5-point favorites heading into this one, although it is very tough to play in Lubbock, and a Texas team that's already had Houston's number this year, the overtime win at the Fertitta Center in January. Can they get 2 against the Cougars here? What a win it would be for Texas Tech, and I think the Red Raiders will come out strong here and probably get a win and knock off Houston to give Houston their second loss on the year in Big 12 play. And the last game of the night, number 23 Kansas taking on Colorado. Kansas probably not going to be ranked in the next couple hours or so when these rankings change, but they are 6.5-point favorites on the road taking on the Buffaloes in Colorado. Not really too much in terms of a Tuesday and Wednesday slate this week, and we'll obviously preview Wednesday's slate on Wednesday's episode. But as for tomorrow's games, just a couple of them. We got number 21 Mississippi State taking on number 4 Alabama at Coleman Coliseum. I think Bama comes up with a win there on their home floor and continues to find ways to win games. And especially at home, they really need to do so as they had those couple of losses, but some good bounce back there, especially after those couple of losses for Alabama so far this season, still sitting at 22-5, 11-3 in SEC play. So we'll see what happens, and obviously we'll preview Wednesday's slate on Wednesday's episode, so make sure you tune in to that one. But that'll do it for episode 56 of the MudWatch Sports Podcast. Please subscribe below. I've been Zach Melamed. Thanks for watching, and talk to you all on Wednesday.